Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another installment of our Conscious Conversations. Just making sure everyone's in the room. It looks like everyone's there. Let's see this. Let's do some housekeeping quick. I've muted everyone so that we can just focus on our speaker and the questions I have for him this evening. At the end of our chat, there'll be a chance for Q&A. And you guys can then unmute yourselves. You're welcome to leave your video on or off. It doesn't make much of a difference to us. And we're going to aim for 45 minutes to an hour, but you never know. There's a lot to cover. Okay, let me introduce you to our speaker this evening, Jean-Pierre Leroux. Welcome, JP. Thank you for joining us.
Merci.
JP and I have been friends for many years. We have wonderful conversations about all things interesting and alternative. And he's probably one of the people with most knowledge on health and health practices and the mind and how to tweak the mind to give us a better experience of life. That's one of the reasons we've called this talk Neurohacking. I think the way we'll run it this evening, JP, is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. We'll get into neurohacking maybe halfway, and then we'll leave any coronavirus-related conversation to the end once all the bots have left.
Yes, right till the end. Very boring subject.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the things I'm not going to get into your bio because we had the bio in our group, but you do a lot of cool stuff. NLP Master Practitioner, you're a coach. Maybe give us just a 30-second of what you do in the field of health.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. It's an honor to be on this. What is it called? The podcast thing that you do?
Conscious Conversations.
Conscious Conversations. I like it. So I feel very honored and privileged to be here. Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And this is probably going to be the kind of conversations that we have around your dining room table anyway. We just have an audience this time, which is great. So what I do, it's always a tricky question to answer because it's a lot. Probably my main kind of vocational thing is helping others embody their own deepest wisdom. So I act like a guide, genie in a bottle if I can do it, and try point people to their own directions, to find their own truth, basically. And so in some sense, you can say I'm a professional mirror. I get paid to reflect, and I bring as much wisdom and integrity to that process as I can. And obviously, I have a background in neurochemistry and pharmacology and all kind of gonzo-esque, self-taught, home-trained. So I bring that into play as one of the kind of wisdom streams by which I work.
Also a writer. I believe you've had quite a few articles published so far.
Yes, by the magazine that I co-own. Yes, in Holistica magazine. Holistica is kind of functioning just digitally now. There's no more magazine printing presses going on in Cape Town. It's all gone.
Wow.
No more magazine distribution. We can talk about that at the end when we talk about COVID. But yeah, so that's all gone digital. But yeah, I wrote 3 articles, and I might continue to do more. In Holistica, and they were all on the same subject, which was, what was the title? I think it was longevity. It was so long ago. Longevity, immortality, and transcendence. They were always called longevity, immortality, and transcendence, and I weave those 3 topics because they're very interchangeable from my perspective. I mean, longevity is easy. Immortality gets trickier because obviously there is no bodily immortality. We know this. So if we're dealing with immortality, it has to be immortality of the spirit in some essential framework. And transcendence of the body-mind is the means by which that happens. So I kind of weaved those topics as best I could.
Fantastic. So perfect then, this is Conscious Conversations. Give us a 5-minute of what you consider conscious to mean.
It's an interesting word. And I'll reference the word consciousness more than conscious. And obviously there's all kinds of semantic nuance to this debate, and you could probably go on for much longer than this call. But as a base, I would use the word consciousness to mean that which really is and which can be known for real. And in fact, that's the only reality that we can really point to with any certainty in our lives. Consciousness is what is, clearly. Everything else merely seems. And everything else can be questioned, analyzed, wondered about. Is it real? Is it not? Is it true? Is it not? Is it appearing? Is it not? Is it a dream? Is it real? What the fuck is going on? All of these questions can be asked about everything that arises, both in the external reality and internal reality, or in the mind. So whether it's in the mind or in the world, one can wonder what that is exactly. But the fundamental reality, which is the consciousness in which all of that arises, and to which all of that arises, and in fact, as which all of that arises, that is undeniable. And so that is, to me, the unshakable foundation of life. And so in some sense, to me, the way that I would use the term conscious is being aware of that fundamental reality, and thus able to question everything. Everything can arise, anything can arise, and often does. And if we're not in a position to be able to question that and reflect upon it from the position of consciousness, then we can be led down all kinds of stupid paths and byways and weird ideas and idiotic philosophies. Excuse me. So for me, yeah, I would use consciousness to refer to the awareness that consciousness is the fundamental metric, fundamental base of from where we operate.
Okay, so there's a lot of there around questioning too. It seems to be tied in quite intrinsically with consciousness and with being conscious. So in our current world where victim consciousness seems to be so popular, particularly around boogeymen who can infect you and kill you, I wonder what, if you can give us your 5-minute take, being, an avid health researcher yourself, on the germ theory of disease.
Oh, just fluff and nonsense, really. I'll elaborate upon that. One can go into all the precedents and all the research that has been done. And I'm sure you've addressed this in other of your talks as well, and the literature's there. So I'm not going to really go into the biological dimension of the germ theory of disease versus the other, because that's all there. But I will point to a more subtle reality, which is the germ theory of disease is a myth in some sense. And I don't mean to use the word myth to trivialize it, but more to point to that it's a fundamental meme by which we can apprehend reality. There's no real difference, essentially, if we talk about a germ, a bacteria, a virus, some kind of too small to see, invisible creature that lurks in places and then leaps out and pounces upon you and makes you ill. That meme is not really distinct from the meme of an evil spirit lurking in the woods. That it's the same meme, basically. We speak it in slightly more sophisticated language, and we think we're really sophisticated, with these left-brained, intellectually evolved Westerners with advanced medicine and science. We're not superstitious. We don't believe in things we can't see. But we do. And a lot of people believe in these things that we can't see because there's a priesthood of people who can see it, like the witch doctor, like the shaman. They can see it because they have machines that go ping and fancy microscopes. And so, and they go, oh, there's these things. And then we go, oh, they are. It is a meme. And so when it, you know, mythology is some kind of, I mean, the word really points to a guiding narrative by which we live. And, you know, myths are very, very deep and pervasive, and they affect how we function and the decisions that we make. My own experience certainly is that, yeah, people get ill and they get better, and it seems intrinsically disconnected. There's also something fundamental, and this is, you know, if we're talking about being conscious, there are different means by which we can live, different mythologies by which we can live. And my experience, and the experience of many people who've explored the science of manifestation or the traditions of magic, have learned this fundamental reality that how we think about the universe, what we presume, the mind forms that we take on board, that is what the universe responds to. So what we believe, what we affirm, tends to be what arises in consciousness. Likewise, what arises in consciousness will affect how we think and how we feel. So there's this kind of Mobius strip, you could say, between manifestation and mind, and they reinforce each other. And part of the means by which I evaluate the truth of something, so I wake up in the morning, I have a fundamental trust in the universe. A fundamental trust in that the universe is good, that it is positive, that it works properly, and that it's not filled with little evil things looking to bite us. So any meme that presumes that there are germs lurking, waiting to pounce, I just go, that's not a meme I want to buy into. Because if you believe that reality, in fact, the universe will tend to conform to your beliefs and give you exactly that. And that's why, on some level, it is real for the people who buy into it and for the people who don't buy into it. So I have a fundamental belief in inherent immunity, essential health that arises from the foundation of inherence in light. And so that mythology is one that I hold much closer to. So I'm not interested in memes that are going to create a kind of universe that I don't want to live in. So from that perspective, yeah, I don't buy into the germ theory of it. Some people probably do, and for them it will come true. And blessings, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very deep perspective. I don't know how many people would get that you have that kind of control over your world and your environment, that the beliefs that you hold so dear actually manifest as reality in your life. I mean, sure, that's deep, especially when so many people in the world believe something. That's quite a large, you know, group mind, so to speak. And, you know, the story that we tell ourselves is the story we tend to live in our lives. I've been saying this for a long time. So thanks for you know, putting that one forward. It's a really powerful one for people to really deeply get. And I think what also happens is that certain memes or certain perspectives or certain beliefs are going to create a massive amount of fear in the system. And that's like a closed loop for more of that scary stuff to happen.
Exactly. I think that is what we're dealing with a lot now. You know, we are, you know, in some sense, we, I know you'll resonate with this because our previous conversations, we are essentially dreaming a reality into existence individually. Not precisely. There is a level of the universe where shit happens. It's not like we can control, you know, every little thing that happens. There is a kind of randomness to conditional reality where stuff arises, just appears. It's how the universe moves. But a lot of what we dream and think and feel and believe does come into manifestation, not necessarily precisely the form that we presumed it, but in the essential mood. We do that individually, but we also do it collectively. So in some sense, one could say that the world that we live in is a collective dream, you know.
Where it gets
Billions
really
of
interesting.
people believing stuff.
Yeah, and where it gets really interesting is when you have control of your own body and the beliefs around that body and how those beliefs affect you. I mean, Dr. Emoto jumps to mind, you know, and water, and how you can have certain intention with water and the water structure changes, and that we are predominantly water. So your thinking, what you're saying about yourself, about your world, you know, the level of your trust and comfort in your world is going to totally reflect in the water structure, just at a biological level.
Yeah, totally. And that's why we can think ourselves healthy and think ourselves sick. And not just think ourselves healthy and sick, but feel, emote in those directions, you know. I think it's more an emotional thing rather than simply a thinking thing, you know, how we emotionally relate. You know, certain beliefs and ideas have an emotional signature to them. If you believe that the universe is populated with evil spirits and malignant germs and strange things waiting to bite you, you know, manifestations of evil, there's a kind of, there's a thought form there, but there's more an emotional mood to that, and probably one of fear, actually. And that mood to me is more the conjurer of reality than simply the thought form, you know.
Yeah, and that fear knocks out your immunity by 50%. So that's pretty powerful.
Totally. I mean, the fact that, you know, since I don't know how long we've been doing it in you know, modern scientific research, certainly in medicinal research, is the placebo. Every drug trial nowadays is, you know, a random double-blind placebo-controlled study. And, you know, if you just get a sugar pill, does it do the thing? And we always test against placebo because there's this unstated, obvious assumption that even Western science is making, is that the sugar pill coupled with belief makes you better sometimes. And so a real drug has to at least beat the sugar pill. But somehow that understanding hasn't permeated Western medical system. It's like, oh, placebos actually work. Duh. You know, like belief really actually does something in the human body mind system. So even though it's used scientifically, it's kind of edited out during the rest of it. You know, we talk about energetic medicine or psychic medicine or, you know, biology of belief kind of stuff. Western science presumes, oh, none of that's real. But we use placebo trials, placebo-controlled trials all the time.
Absolutely. I'd recommend everyone who's curious about that, look into the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's got some pretty profound stuff on exactly that, how our thought forms and our beliefs affect our physiology and biology. And one of the other things that I was reminded by Baron today was how memory, you know, a lot of our beliefs based on memory of the past, and how, you know, people think that when they remember something and they remember the event, but what's actually been found is that when you remember something, you're simply remembering the last time you remembered the event. You don't remember the event. And so you're constantly changing your memory as time goes on. And so this for me is a great opportunity to rewrite our belief systems.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. I mean, and they've done empirical studies to show how memory evolves. None of us really want to kind of hold that too tightly, because then it's like, well, you know, you're on shaky ground, you know.
Right,
yeah, it is true. The memories definitely evolve. There's no question about it, you know.
So this is getting us nicely into the realm of neurohacking. You know, we have these beliefs, these limiting beliefs that keep us stuck, keep us in places where we're in victim consciousness and we don't feel like we have any power in the world, particularly power over our own bodies and, you know, our own health sovereignty. So, I mean, in your practice, when you're working with people, you know, give us some of the things that you would use to get someone to really get in there and start reevaluating what it is that they've been thinking and change that.
Well, the first, and it's always, you know, if I'm working with someone, there's always going to be a natural and organic intuitive process by which we get to a particular place. But in essence, where I would be skillfully leading anyone would be to the place that we take 100% and absolute responsibility individually for absolutely everything. And that is a choice. It's just a choice. It's just a decision. You don't need any support to that. It's not like you need some kind of therapeutic process to get there. It's just a choice, and you can just decide. In other words, it's the radical opposite of victim consciousness, where you go like absolutely everything. I'm talking about the deforestation happening in Borneo. Okay, I'm responsible for that. It's happening in my world. It's coming to arising in my consciousness. I take a radical responsibility for everything that happens. Every time I stub my toe, every time I get a parking ticket, everything that happens to me, I take ownership of that. And that is a strategic act by which we empower ourselves. Because anything less than that, even if you don't like taking responsibility for the deforestation in Borneo, or for George Floyd getting killed, or for the COVID thing, not going to call it a pandemic, the COVID theater. This thing has arisen within our consciousness, and as such, we're responsible. And even if one could question, well, how completely responsible are you or not? And it's valid to question. I mean, it's a kind of long leap to make. Well, to assume that you are literally responsible for every legless person in the gutter in Calcutta. But it's more of a strategic intent by which we own that responsibility, because that is the most radically empowering place from which you can operate. And so to choose anything less than that is to set yourself on a path whereby you are not 100% empowered. You might be partially empowered. And to whatever degree you're not empowered, the universe can pick on you and beat up on you and mess with you. If you take radical responsibility for absolutely everything, then you're in that place from where magic can be created, and you can own it. And then you can build from that place. So engaging in any kind of victim consciousness is just stupid. Like, why would you do that? It's a way to suffer, And it's a clear choice. You just go you just choose, you're going to go down this road or that road, end of, So that would be the kind of beginning place for me. And in some sense, you need to be in that place before you can truly work with real power in the world, Sure. I don't know. Was that? I can't remember if that was an answer to the question or if I went meandering.
No, I mean that's profound. It's deep. It's the crux of it. It'd be nice if we could maybe spend 10 minutes just delving into some of the actual tools that you would use to get someone to look there. Physical tools, emotional, mental tools. Stuff that you would ask people to do, or that you found in your own life helps you stay in that space of, full responsibility. Because obviously for most people, it's a huge ask. Wow, I'm responsible for everything. Wow, I'm going to run for the hills.
Totally. Well, the culture we've grown up in, for the most part, has not been a sacred culture. We've been born into, for most of us anyway, either a relatively secular culture or kind of, very amateur kind of religion-based spirituality. A lot of which systems do anything other than take responsibility. It's all about blaming someone else. A lot of religionists blame the devil, and then a lot of secular people in the closet blame God. So I understand. I have a lot of compassion, and for myself as well. We came into this world not in a sacred orientation, weren't trained from birth to do this. And so to enter that place of taking full responsibility it's a great leap for certain people. For me, I would even say that to use the word technique, I'm cautious of using that word because it implies something trivial or small, like you could kind of learn it in a weekend, And I mean, you can understand the principles in 10 minutes. But for me, the contemplative traditions by which we enter into direct relationship with consciousness, for me, that is at the foundation of it. And what I mean by entering into direct relationship to consciousness is really, I mean, all of the traditions of meditation in some sense are working with us, is coming into a more profound understanding of who we are, and spending some exploratory time there. So that for me would be the first tool, is entering into a place, taking the time in one's day, in one's life, to spend some time examining, not just asking who am I, but examining who are you, what are you, what's really going on. You know, it's looking at the universe through fresh eyes from first principles and noticing what we notice, like what's going on. And it's very simple to do. You know, if one sits down in the garden, you know, take half an hour with nothing to do and just sit there and notice what you notice. Just notice it and examine it. And don't bring an attitude to it. Don't judge it. Don't evaluate it. Don't think about it. Just notice whatever arises, whatever thoughts arise, whatever bird flies in front of you, and just notice. And then in that place, one can ask oneself, so what's really going on? And I think most people will fairly rapidly, if they engage that fairly rapidly, and I can probably even point it out right now, you will notice that who and what you really are is consciousness. Obviously, even our own body. You know, you can say, well, yes, I'm this body mind, but you will notice that you can notice the body. So if you can notice the body, if you can be aware of the body, then you're obviously not it. You are that which is aware of the body, clearly. And that's an interesting place to be. If you have a thought, you can identify with the thought, or you can notice that you are aware of the thought you just had. And if you are aware of the thought you just had, then you're in the position of the awareness of that thought. The thought is arising to you, so you're not it. The body is arising to you, and the entire universe is arising to you, within you. And so coming into a relationship with who we really are, which is essential consciousness, for me, that is a fundamental technique. And that is what the traditions of meditation, in all of their various forms and ways and methods, I mean, there's thousands and millions of techniques of meditation and contemplation, but they all come from that same fundamental place of just being really, really real. It's right before us with what is going on. And if we can notice ourselves and acknowledge that, oh, maybe we are consciousness rather than the body mind, then we can begin. So I would say that is the fundamental technique. There are a few supportive techniques to that. One is simply breath. So if we're embodied, and we are, the one expression of embodiment that is probably more fundamental than anything else is breath. In various traditions, this is breath and spirit are translated. They come from the same root words. So to breathe and to feel is also a way to be in contemplation of consciousness. So I would say any kind of conscious engagement with any kind of breathing technique, whether it's sophisticated pranayama or some kind of Wim Hof style, anything that is working with the breath and bringing consciousness and awareness to the breath. I mean, these sound like very, very simple, basic things, and they are, but I'm very much into foundational practices, because unless the foundation is solid, you start getting into, for example, techniques of manifestation or affirmation or thinking certain things, thinking a certain way, choosing to believe certain things, repeating mantras, whatever it is. Unless these are built on a stable foundation of, in some sense, a knowledge of who we are and the ability to drop into who we are using the breath, they become not that powerful. I mean, I'm sure everyone on this call, I have this experience of, you affirm a whole lot of shit and then something else happens. We've all had experience, and a lot of people do, kind of all kinds of affirmations, and what happened? Did it work? No. So I think, I mean, affirmations, and I'm not just talking about mental affirmations, but, affirmations by which we project into the universe a certain reality that we desire. Whether that's kind of saying, I am healthy, or I am happy, or I am loved, or whatever, or thinking it, or believing it, or visualizing it, or even entering into kind of bodily asanas and mudras by which we express that. All of that has more power if it comes from a base of inherence in consciousness, essentially, and ability to feel that consciousness via the breathing. So for me, that would be the base techniques that I would recommend to people.
So making space and time every day to get into a contemplative space, meditative space, breathing space, and in that space, exploring what consciousness is to you and what is beyond your own thinking.
For sure. For sure. I mean, not everyone's into that exploration, but there's not much else interesting going on in there's all the, yes, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the universe. But even the most wild and amazing experience is happening within the medium of consciousness. It is a display, you could say, on the screen of consciousness. It's an arising within the space of consciousness. Absolutely everything is taking place within this invisible transcendental medium. It's the one thing that requires investigation more than anything else, I think.
Okay, fantastic. So you've started your morning off, you've done your med practice, you've done your deep breathing, you feel great, you feel like the universe is at your beck and call and you're totally in alignment, and some guy cuts you off in the traffic and you're like, screw you, you dumbass, look what you did, and you wrecks your entire day, you're cross, you're angry, you shout at your kids and your wife, like, this is real life. So, I know that you're very deep into neurochemistry and how to shift neurochemistry. And obviously breathing is great, do deep breathing and that kind of stuff, but I've felt and experienced in my own life, sometimes you just need a little bit more. So maybe let's get into a bit of neurochemistry and how to actually physiologically change the way your brain is working and wired to constantly be giving us that kind of like rubbish answer in life.
Yeah. So what I'd say as a before I get into the nuances in neurochemistry, when you have the day that you just described, and we've all had them, that is also a place to surrender, because whenever, this is a terminology some may be familiar with. For me, what is happening is the goddess. It's the feminine aspect of reality, the divine she, you could say. And she's going to do whatever the fuck she does. And that is what goddesses do. And so sometimes you can have all your practice like waxed, and then you just get sideswiped because that's what she's doing. And the appropriate disposition, as challenging as it is to take it and even to celebrate it in some sense. Go, okay, this is the force of the universe, which is way greater than me. This is the wild nature of the universe, Sometimes you can liken it to the weather. The weather blows however the weather blows, And we might want nice warm days and soft rain falling on the carrots all the time, but sometimes there's a hurricane, and that's her nature. So when she does that, our appropriate response is celebration, and that is to have that kind of mood is more conducive, and the reason I'm saying this prior to the neurochemistry question, is more conducive of good neurochemistry than the alternative, which is to complain. So I don't know if there's a neurotransmitter for complaint. There might be, but the mood of complaint and the mood of which complaint and victimhood kind of go hand in hand. If the hurricane sideswipes you, yeah, you've been victimized by the hurricane. You just get like thrown through the window, smashed on the pavement. In some sense, you were the victim of that hurricane. But the mood that one can enter into is a choice. You can go, oh, okay. Either I I created the conditions to bring this on, and sometimes simultaneously she's dancing and this is what happened. And so we stay in positive relationship. And so when we choose not to enter into the mood of complaint, that's good for neurochemistry for starters. So I think that's really, really important. I'm really into the subtleties of neurochemistry and including exogenous tweaking of it. And by exogenous, I mean things that are not developed inside the body. And I'm talking about drugs and supplements and all kinds of agents by which we tweak the body. But again, all of that only works better on a foundation when our attitude is because our attitude produces chemistry instantly. So in terms of neurochemistry, there are definitely certain ways that we can live in the world that have an effect on how we feel and how we experience ourselves. All of us get this. Anyone who's ever had more wine to drink than they intended, which I think is probably everyone, knows how simply changing blood chemistry changes your state profoundly. All that's happened is a tiny shift in your blood chemistry. That's it. And everything feels different. The way you relate to your loved ones, some people become gregarious, some people become aggressive, some people become stupid. Just a tiny tweak in blood chemistry. And that just shows how profoundly susceptible we are. Anyone who's worked with entheogens knows as well that a little drop of something can change our entire experience of the universe. So fundamental, and I think this is where you and I have a deep kinship, is recognizing the profound pharmacological effects of diet. Just simply that, if you eat shitty food, you get stupid and behave stupidly and get lumpy and dumb. And there are definitely certain ways, and I think you've probably covered this ad infinitum from various angles, and I think we all know the basic rules by which dietary chemistry affects neurochemistry. So I mean, one of the things for me which is highly important is simple acid versus alkalinity, blood pH, and I think just that. If you have highly acidic blood, you feel a little twisted. You just do. And if your blood is alkaline, you kind of feel a little smoothed out. This is well understood, well documented. Everyone's had the experience. You can do it, like do green juices for 3 weeks, see how you feel, then do burgers for 3 weeks hard and see how you feel. You'll be in a shitty mood at the end of the 3-week burger thing. And that's mainly blood pH, obviously. Obviously, all the chemicals that are in junk food, toxic food, they just mess with stuff. I mean, I don't even need to go into the detail. It's just sand in the gears, So keeping the body nourished appropriately is just foundational. I mean, there's also little things, and I think also everyone is familiar with this nowadays. It's like we don't need to go into it, the relationship between gut health and neurotransmitters. It seems certainly like a lot of the body's serotonin is generated in the gut by gut flora. Lack of serotonin particularly makes for feeling contracted and scratchy. So there's the whole realm of, ferments, germs, bacteria. What is the figure by you'll probably be more on the pulse of this. Our biomass by weight, isn't it? It's more than half, isn't it? Is actually bacteria.
Yeah.
Of the dry body, if you take the water out.
Yeah. And cellular, it's even higher.
Yeah, we are a colony of bacteria, and so that needs to be kept in check, in balance, should I say? And this is the other thing as well. If when you live in a world, once again, there's the saying of self-fulfilling prophecies. I think all prophecies are self-fulfilling, every last one of them. I don't think there's such a thing as a non-self-fulfilling prophecy. What's the word? A tautology, where it's unnecessary to say the thing because it just is. If we believe in that there's maybe we believe that there's some good bacteria, but there are also evil bacteria lurking, and they're hiding in amongst the cool ones and behind the trees. And if that worldview, that mythology informs our living, then we start going, oh, we must try kill the bad ones, and then we don't have very sophisticated tools, so we have all these things which kill things, and then it kills the good things, and then we feel like shit, and we get ill and go see, and so it becomes self-fulfilling again. It's a phrase you've used. The universe works. It really does. As long as you don't dick with it too much. And a lot of the times, based on our prevailing mythology, we dick around. Instead of trusting the fundamental functionality and usability and perfection of the universe, we go, it wasn't built right. Something's wrong here. We need to take vaccines to make immunity work, which has been working perfectly for I don't know how many billions of years. The fact that the human species is alive today as a species says a lot about the cellular and DNA-based wisdom, including immunity, which has brought us through millennia and millennia of process. We discount that. We go, oh no, something's not right. We need to dick around, tinker in the mechanism, play around in the circuitry. Normally in a very amateurish and Gumby-esque way,
So the kind of playing around in the circuitry we're talking about is if you've been born into a world where the overriding belief system is that you're a problem, the world's a problem, and you're going to be faced with problems every day of your life, and that's just it. Shifting that worldview sometimes takes some powerful tools. So, what are your favorite powerful tools?
Yes.
I've used some of them. Tell us about them.
Large amounts of LSD in one's 20s.
Okay. Well, maybe let's keep it on the legal level.
Is that politically correct to say?
I don't think anything these days is politically correct to say. You get into trouble for saying just about anything.
When we, I got born, got vaccinated, got taught a bunch of bullshit, ate dodgy food. And by the time I was an adult, I was lost, confused. What the fuck, I'm certainly not recommending this path for everyone. I think I was kind of dense enough and heavy enough and stupid enough that I required kind of shamanic intervention in my life to kind of get that slap and that wake up and kind of turning the ship. I certainly don't presume that everyone needs that, but a lot of people have found great utility in the various shamanic traditions because they're so powerful. Obviously, therapy in the hands of a good therapist is a very powerful tool as well. It takes a little bit more time. Engaging in a spiritual tradition and spiritual practice that has real substance and is alive, that also works. But also these are not immediate processes. Sometimes a near-death experience does it. Either one's own near-death experience or the near-death or the actual death experience of someone close.
So what a great opportunity we have right now. The world is apparently facing a near-death experience of humans because of a virus. So we have this opportunity to recognize that and make some changes.
I hope so. I really hope that Yeah, let me just say, like, I really hope so. Sometimes it takes like a bigger slap than what people are able to receive. And you know, as a species, we can be very lethargic and dull. You know, you kind of get the awakening, you get the slap, and you're enlightened all afternoon. But by the next morning, you're the same dumbass you were yesterday, because we have these tendencies to revert to our patterning. You know, and you know, I think that is the great challenge.
So as a day-to-day, you know, trying to reverse that tendency and overcoming that inertia. I mean, I'm a great fan of potent plants. Portia's just asked, you know, how to deal with anxiety on a day-to-day level. What are your top potent plants that you would recommend someone utilize for anxiety specifically, which I think is very common right now?
Okay. So there's a number, obviously. The most potent one that I know and that I work with a lot actually is Sceletium tortuosum, otherwise known as Kanna or Channa. It's the traditional medicine of the Khoi and the San people. It comes from South Africa. It's one of our botanical treasures. And I would say it's of all of the things, and there are many, you know, magnolia and St. John's wort and kava, cannabis, you know, CBD fraction of. There's all kinds of things, you know. I mean, opium is great for anxiety, but it's not really sustainable. Sceletium is, I think it's probably the closest to a model anxiolytic in terms of like very particularly decreasing anxiety without that much other effect. You know, a lot of things will have, you know, opium, for example, you know, it decreases anxiety and increases euphoria, and it's also a painkiller. Sceletium is like very targeted on anxiety. It's a very powerful plant, has to be worked with care as well. It's a very good serotonin releasing agent. So anxiety from a biochemical perspective is very often just low serotonin, nothing else. So anything that boosts serotonin generally will be good for anxiety. Ferments like eat lots of sauerkraut is really good. You know, I mean, it has profound biochemical effect.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would.
Levi wants to know how you would use Sceletium. What's your recommended use?
Who's asking?
Levi.
Okay. So I would say the first is experimentation. It's a plant that needs to be worked with and gotten to know. There's an ancient Chinese saying, which is the larger the front, the larger the back, indicating that anything that has radical levels of positivity also has potential flip side. So Sceletium is certainly a plant that is, you know, has a very large front, and so one has to work with it cautiously. It's, you know, something like St. John's wort is very, very subtle compared to Sceletium. You know, Sceletium is way more powerful, and so it has to be worked with a little bit more care. You have to engage with it a little bit more directly. But I would say the best way to do it is, I mean, there's lots of Sceletium products on the market. Is experiment with lots of different ones, and because they're not all the same, they're not all created equal. Sceletium has a lot of variability in itself as a plant. I have a website, sceletium.com, and I actually go a lot into the detail of how to use Sceletium on that website, so people can go and reference that if they want. But most of it involves experimentation. I'm not going to go into the subtle biochemistries of Sceletium, but there's a lot of variability in the plant. So for the lay person, practically, you want to experiment, work with it, adjust your dose, try different products, and literally see what works. And I think that's the right thing. I think using a Sceletium tea is probably most subtle. You can also grow Sceletium, ferment it, dry it, and chew it, which is what the Khoi called kohut. If you want to get really close to the plant, there are lots of products in capsules and tinctures and what have you.
Great.
And I would say
that link into the chat screen for anyone who wants to access that link, sceletium.com.
Cool. And I would say the if one is wanting to use Sceletium on an ongoing basis, like regularly as an anti-anxiety type thing or antidepressant, then the optimum way to use it is at or just below threshold. In other words, you want to take it to where you can feel it just, and then you want to back off 5%. That's actually, especially for long-term use, you want to actually not feel it. You want to be just, every substance has a, it's in your body, and as the dose goes up, you can't feel it, you can't feel it, you can't feel it, and then there's a threshold, and that's where you feel it just, and then you exceed that threshold, and then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And when one uses something clinically on an ongoing basis, you want to be at threshold and just underneath it, ideally just beneath, so you almost can't feel it, but it's active in the system. As soon as you're feeling it, now you have the potential to unbalance your own chemistry. You start enjoying the feeling, you start riding on the feeling, you start using it a little bit crutch-like. So just under threshold is the optimum. So, you increase the dose until you feel it, and then you back off 5%. That's the optimum. And I'd say that with any substance that one wants to use ongoing, sometimes just on threshold, but not really exceeding that. That's the standard precaution. And again, I'm very into pharmacology. I'm really, really into drugs. I'm really, really into psychoactive plants. It's my whole life. I'm completely immersed in it. It's what I love doing. I love making tinctures and designing things, seeing how they work in the body. But I also know that the nervous system, the human nervous system, works best on nothing. It works best at baseline. It's meant to work with air and water and stuff, You're not really meant to tweak it too much. You can, and the mechanisms work, and we do have receptors, and all of the shamanic and healing traditions all work, and they have great utility. But for me, the higher road is still allowing, using things as healing substances as a means to allow the nervous system to find its own natural equilibrium, and then riding there. I don't believe in anything on a completely regular, ongoing basis. The human nervous system does collapse towards balance. No one's like permanent. There might be a few exceptions, but hardly anyone is permanently out of balance and therefore needs a permanent crutch. I'm much more into working with the system, jiggling it, massaging it, allowing it to return to a place of balance and harmony, which it tends to do.
That's such a great point, because I think so many people are looking for something as a crutch so that they don't have to take personal responsibility for, the thing that's actually causing you to feel that way. Those emotions are indicating there's something you need to look at. There are thoughts that aren't supporting you. There's something in your life that's not working. You need to get into that realm. A good dose of know thyself is really the ultimate medicine. But what I love about things like Sceletium is if you're finding it hard to even get to that point of questioning, at least this can give you a little moment where you can have a breather, and you can remember that the real work is to sit down, to do your deep thinking, to do your meditation, do your breathing, and then to feel, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Like, where is this coming from? And actually work it through in that way. Exactly.
And that's, we completely aligned there. So that's the high road for sure. Is using it, and that's using it in a shamanic way. I don't think there's any shamanic tradition where the medicine is taken forever. The medicine is taken to reveal insight, correct an imbalance, make an adjustment, tweak the system, give it a knock from this side or that side, and then find a new homeostasis. And I think, this is, I mentioned opium as a kind of something that one has to take a lot of care with. So, opium is illegal. I'm therefore not proposing it, although it does grow wild all over the place. Opium is a great anti-anxiety thing, but it works so well that people can just go, oh, everything's fine. I'll just have more opium and everything remains fine. And everything seems fine. And that's why one can go into a Ming Dynasty opium den for months and not come out and have a great time. But one never then deals with oneself and one's place in the universe, because you're just coasting on this like it's all fine, but it ain't fine, And so if one is wanting to do the deep spiritual work by which we embody consciousness more and more and more, we need to be able to feel where we are creating the blocks. So if there is a little bit of anxiety or a bit of fear or a bit of anger in the system, that is also a reflection to us of where we need to make corrections. So you don't want to drug that away, so yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, if you look at something like what's going on in America with opiate addiction, it's massive, and there's just a lot of people who have a lot of pain that they haven't dealt with and haven't looked at, and that's going to bubble up over and over again. And then that usually, when it bubbles up particularly strongly, someone gets slapped with some diagnosis from the DSM and get put on hardcore psych drugs, which just suppresses it for the rest of your life. And you never get to integrate any of that stuff. Just mad.
No, don't get me started on the DSM. I'll use language that's not quite PG if we go down that road.
So, sure, we're at 56 minutes already, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So I think that what we can do is maybe just ask if anyone's got specific questions, the content we've brought up so far, and then we can finish off. And then if anyone wants to stick around, we can have a 10-minute, 15-minute rant on the current state of the world and coronavirus.
I'm happy to. I got nothing planned for the evening, so I've got enough hot chocolate, my drug for the evening, and a warm fire. So can't you test it?
You know what? I had one of these before the talk. I was just going to see what it's like. Tell us about this for a second. I've got 3 of them, actually. They're in my kitchen.
I recognize those.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that's a little side project of mine. Something I'm just having a lot of fun with, actually. So obviously I work clinically with people. I take people off psych drugs from time to time. I mean, if someone comes into my office and they're on a drug, they always come off. I have no exception to that. So that's the kind of serious side of the work that I do. And those little packages that you held up, that's a company called elixirs. And that is the more playful side of, it just comes out of my understanding of biochemistry and pharmacology. I'm at heart, I'm a profound hedonist. I'm really, really into happiness and pleasure, and deep enjoyment of embodiment.
Wouldn't that be amazing if more people were like that? Jeez.
I wish presume everyone is.
Oh man, I think too many people watch the news and so get conditioned out of it.
Yeah. And that said, I mean, I think that is our birthright in some sense. Even look, one of our greatest pleasures, our greatest enjoyment is sex. And that is, think about it, the human race, in fact, not even the human race, the entire biological world replicates based upon sexual pleasure. It's that fundamental. DNA replicates via sex. We all know this, obviously, but what a cool universe to live in. This is a profound universe. It's built. The universe could have been built anyhow. DNA replication or transference and transmission of the species could have. You could have a universe where if you just touched your heads together for 5 seconds and then you felt a little heat and then a baby was made. But no, we have lovemaking, and that's how babies get made.
Okay, so let's get back to these pretty packets. I'm going to read the back of this red one, just so people understand what's in it, because it's so fantastic. Quintessence of pink sacred lotus, Bengal velvet bean, fig marigold, fairy wings. What is fairy wings?
Fairy wings is a less
Did
common
you actually
term.
catch fairies and put fairy wings in here?
No. It's actually a name for epimedium, horny goatweed.
Okay.
Horny goatweed, I feel, is an unfortunate name.
Sure.
So fairy wings is a less common name for that plant, and it is a very particular extract from epimedium.
Okay.
That we have in there, which does very cool things.
I went a bit specific, but just tell us about the 3 and
That's
what they do and what they're for.
So these are products where I've used my kind of botanical and pharmacological knowledge to create things which enhance intimacy, sexuality, emotion, feeling. So I've made a kind of line of love drugs, you could say. They can be used in any context, obviously. But I wanted things which can be brought into the sphere of bodily enjoyment, celebration, physical intimacy, sexuality, lovemaking, all together that enhance that thing. And so they all have slightly different moods and feelings. But yeah, I mean, whenever I talk about it, if you mention the word aphrodisiac, everyone's really fascinated by, what that is. Are they real and do they exist? And obviously, every culture has had its particular potions. We live at a time now, which I, as a herbalist, I love the time that we're in because, 10,000 years ago, if you lived in a particular culture, there was no airplanes, no internet. So you had to use, if you lived in the Central African rainforest, you got herbs from the Central African rainforest, and that's that. You couldn't have something from India and South America. And now everything, so I can now make formulae, pulling from all over the world little botanical treasures and harmonizing them. And obviously all the information is out. So in terms of creating elixirs that are about enjoyment, it's very, very easy to do now. Obviously, it takes the understanding of how they weave together. So that's just something I'm having a lot of fun with. So all of these products, I wouldn't put them in the realm of tonic necessarily. They're not the kind of things that one does every day. I have other products in development around that. These are very much special occasion celebratory things, just to enhance mood, to feel better. But they're designed to be balancing on the nervous system. So they are tools of enjoyment, but they don't throw the nervous system out. In other words, they're compatible with a regenerative, healthy life, and a life that is predicated on balance.
So if you want to have a bit of a pick-me-up or something to have fun in an evening, you don't have to go towards the most dangerous drug known to humankind, which is alcohol. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah,
wow,
exactly.
That's very exciting.
Exactly. And obviously alcohol I find it very one-dimensional. These are much more subtle, sophisticated, nuanced, interesting.
Okay, everyone's keen now. What is the website name?
Per.love.
There we go.
It's early phase. It's a very basic website. I made it on the plane to St. Martin the other day. I'm not a web developer, so it's very simple, but it is working, and you can order. But it's going to get much more elaborate as we proceed.
Well, just on that, I mean, just before I get to Portia's question, we started out with neurohacking. To me, one of the greatest tools then for neurohacking is getting into your heart, which is what love really is. So if you can, utilize some potent plant that allows you to drop more deeply into your enjoyment of your body and your heart center, I mean, wow, what an ultimate way of hacking neurology, which is telling you that life's a problem and you're a problem.
Exactly. And thank you for going there. The heart is fundamental to all of it. I think I spoke a lot about, the background quality of the universe is consciousness, but the mood of consciousness truly felt is love. I'd even go so far as to say that's exactly what the universe is made out of. It's literally made out of love. And a lot of us get dissociated from that and, contracted from it and bound up in all kinds of boring adventures. So yeah, for sure. These are about opening the heart, resensitizing us to the heart, allowing us to feel and remember why the fuck we're here, which is to feel and experience and express love. I don't know what else is going on. I don't think there's any other purpose in life. What could it possibly be?
So Portia asked, do antidepressants, do they damage the nervous system? And is getting off them a good thing?
Which antidepressants?
Yeah.
You mean like chemical ones?
Chemical ones, I expect. There's not much else going on in the world.
Yeah, definitely. They, I'll just say it. My view is that all synthetically produced chemicals that are attempting to tweak, I saw that, yes, chemical antidepressants. Yeah, heinous. All of those things are very clumsy tools. they generally haven't been produced from cultures that are about health and healing. They often coming out of money-based, business-based cultures. In other words, what can we sell a lot of to make lots of money? And that intent does actually transmit across. The field, the consciousness of the person making the drug and intention that they have for it does in fact transmit. And all of these things are, to get just more technical and practical about it, all of these molecules that normal chemical antidepressants are made from do not exist in nature. They are not part of the essential biological biochemistry that we have grown up with. You know, if you look at a plant like Sceletium, for example, just to single it out, or any plant that has mind manifesting qualities, humanity and these plants, we have co-evolved over billions and billions of years. And so there is a relationship between human DNA, plant DNA, human and plant biochemistry, and all of those associations we have co-evolved. Now we start making these insane, novel chemical drugs, which you just don't find in nature. And in fact, they always are not found in nature, because if they're found in nature, then they cannot be patented. So the drug companies are deliberately making stuff that might try to resemble something in nature, but it's not what is in nature, because they need the patent so they can make lots of money. And so you are putting into your brain things that have not co-evolved with human consciousness. And and we can see the results, you know. Yeah, they sometimes provide some kind of thing, but one just has to do some reading and just see the long-term results are generally almost always negative, almost always. I personally would never go there. I would never recommend it under any circumstances whatsoever. That's
Sure.
my view.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this earlier. A lot of that is just in the direction of just delete it or try and mute it or try and suppress it, so you don't actually deal with the underlying issue. And when you're talking about potent plants, you know, they work in a different way, where they allow your body to still have the capacity to delve into whatever is the causative agent, rather than just can't think about it.
Totally. And I think that, I mean, because I consult people directly, I mean, I would even say that maybe as much as half the people who come see me either are on or have been on some form of chemical weird thing. And no one ever goes, hey, I feel great on these things. No one does. They always go like, I feel a bit sideways. I feel a little out of balance. I feel off kilter. My heart doesn't work properly. I'm getting strange moods. My sex drive's gone. My sexual functionality is not good. It's like my hair's falling out, my ear tingles. There's always something that doesn't feel quite right. And that is because it is not aligned or harmoniously connected with our natural biochemistry. We are a living organism. These things are derived from the minds of mad scientists a lot of the time.
So this is a great point to completely shift in another direction that I'd almost forgotten about for tonight. But I think, you know, a lot of people are experiencing these emotions and these mental states of despair and trouble because of the way that humans live today in cities, packed on top of each other, you know, outsourcing everything about us to other people. You know, you and I both live out of the city in nature. You know, tell us about your space and how you've seen community and eco-village and, you know, living off the land, and how, you know, how that affects your mind and your heart and your consciousness.
For sure. Well, I mean, as you know, I've created a kind of eco-village community, or are in the process of creating an eco-village community on a 50-hectare piece of land in the Garden Route in Wilderness. It's very beautiful. It's full of nature. It's got fresh air, not too much Wi-Fi. Obviously, there still are waves in the air. I like going into the city. I enjoy it. Less and less so. But they're not places of, I mean, they can be places of intimacy. But often there's just a kind of like mad bustle going on. So I think there's a lot to be said for living in a circumstance where, A, we can eat healthy food, grow our own food, control the water, a little bit, just live closer to nature, live closer to the rhythms of nature. And I think the harmonizing effect of sacred community, I think this is also how we have lived for a long time. And if you look at, tribal cultures, shamanic cultures, there's a community, there's a village in the forest. And I think that is our natural way of living, the kind of, the nuclear family in its little box. Yeah, you got your own hut and stuff, but when we become disconnected and dissociated from each other, which is, particularly, the whole COVID social distancing thing, just to touch there, it's just diabolical as all hell. The sense that collectivity is now like forbidden, and that is where we draw our strength and our vitality from, actually. So yeah, living in community, I think, is a healthy disposition. It's obviously challenging because we are not brought up in these structures. We're brought up, we were brought up, probably all of us, in a house with a mom and a dad, or some kind of nuclear family set up, and there might have been neighbors and friends, but very few of us are brought up in a kind of tribal community kind of context. And I'm certainly, I'm not trying to create a tribal village. We still have our individual houses, but there's more of a collective process, collective decision-making, collective use of the land, relationship to the land. And that feels very harmonizing and fundamentally healthy. And I think even in the, in the industrial world, with all the attendant problems of, pollution, et cetera, and how we're damaging the planet and, over-resource utilization, I think the eco-village as a concept, a largely self-sustaining, permaculture-based eco-village is going to almost have to become the model by which the species continues. Yeah, you can have cities, but they're fragile. They're very, very fragile. All the food's getting trucked in every day, and if something breaks, oops, I forget who it was. I think it might have been, yeah.
No, I think a lot of people are recognizing that cities are fragile and toxic and looking at making a shift. And I think a lot of people have been kind of toying with the idea for many, many years. And now with the situation that COVID presents, it's just pushing people harder than ever before. Have you seen an up in interest on people wanting to move out?
Yeah. Well, within a week of the first hard lockdown, we had 13 parallel conversations going on with people who were interested in joining the community.
Wow.
Immediate uptick of interest. And good, because I think people are recognizing. We also, there's a kind of, I think everyone realizes that we still are in the kind of lockdown game, even though it's kind of like chilled a little bit, You could buy beer on Thursdays, we're free,
and you grow your own tobacco, so you don't have to worry about cigarettes.
Yeah, no, exactly. My harvest was actually, I had a tobacco harvest last year, but I left it in the barn for too long and it got a bit of mold in it. So I had whole buckets, but I just torched a lot,
So, are there still spaces available in your setup there? How do people learn more about it?
Yeah, so we sold the share just a week or two ago, and there's theoretically one space that's widely available now of the 10. There are 4 that are, there are 4 that are reserved presently by people who are going like, I want in, not quite ready, and they have a kind of first right of refusal. There's one that is completely unspoken for. Obviously, if someone comes in and wants to do it, and we've got quite a strict community vetting process, because we also realize that when people live in community, it requires a certain orientation, certain quality, a certain maturity.
So basically, if someone comes to you to check out the property and they're wearing a mask, they're probably not going to get in.
No. They won't even get through the door. We have no mask policy. Yeah. Yeah.
But JP, masks are essential to keep people safe.
Yeah. No, they're not. I always, every time I get the opportunity, and I take the opportunity literally every time I see someone in a mask, we have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go out that much. I don't have too many conversations, but you know, the DHL courier was here today, and we had the conversation again.
So how do
know,
people
of
find
course,
out
I mean,
more before I sidetrack you into masks too far? Facebook.
Okay,
So
yeah, there's a group on Facebook called Green Canvas of Light, and it's a group, and you can go there and you can join it, and you can interact with me from there and find out about. I mean, we post a lot of stuff about permaculture and sustainability and what have you. So we do have the 10 shares, and then we also created like another 10 almost kind of leasehold sites whereby people can get, you know, actually become community members without having to, you know, put down 800,000-900,000 rand to buy a full share. It's almost a kind of like rent to buy kind of model.
Okay.
And people can come in with a kind of temporary setup, non-permanent structure, so tiny house on wheels, safari tent, yurt, whatever. So we have created a framework to allow another 10 people to come in like that, and then we're full. So as I said, there's one main share that I could say, you know, could be bought tomorrow. The others will require a discussion, and then the leasehold ones are available. So Green Canvas of Light would be the first place, and then people can contact me via that. But yeah, the mask thing, just to go back there, it's like, you know, if one bought into the viral contagion model, which I don't, and if one bought into COVID-19 as being a disease-causing agent, which I don't, even if you did buy into all those things, then wearing a mask is like, it's like building a tennis court fence around your house to keep the muzzies out. It's just stupid. Makes you look like a dumbass, you know? So...
Well, I think that's one of the deep issues right now, is that when the mainstream media controls what people hear and they use scientism as their backing, and most people don't know the difference between scientific and scientism, then, you know, they fall for the climbing numbers, and the climbing numbers are climbing every day because more and more people are tested every day with the faulty tests. So obviously the numbers are going to go up, even though the death rate is plummeting every day worldwide, but no one sees those numbers.
I know. It's sad and tragic, and I think people who have a background in health are kind of able to see it for what it is pretty quickly. Certainly, people who've done a lot of research around this. I mean, we had swine flu 12 years ago, and I did a very deep dive on it then. And I don't know if people know, there was, you know, you can read up on it. There was the 1976 swine flu epidemic. It played out just like this one. It was like, swine flu, you're all gonna fucking die. Oh my God, everyone needs a vaccine. They made a vaccine. A lot of people got it. A lot of people got sick. Lots of lawsuits. We've already done this.
Wow.
And the similarities are profound. It's a game. I mean, an awful, sad, tragic game. I don't mean to trivialize it by saying that. But it is a kind of a collective meme by which we torture ourselves as a species. And it's going to have, you know, I mean, the effects already been tragic on people, and it's creating suffering, and it's, as a culture, it's absolutely self-inflicted, and we all bear collective responsibility for what we've created.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about it. You know, I mean, we can educate as much as we can, and I think a lot of people are attempting to educate. I saw, I mean, obviously, the internet is full of little memes, you know, it's become a meme factory of late. And I saw this thing out there, you've probably seen it as well. It had a picture of a whole lot of people walking around on all fours, not on their knees, but on their feet and on their hands, wearing masks. And the thing was like, you know, if the government said that everyone had to walk around on all fours because the COVID virus hovers 3 feet above the ground, probably a lot of people would do that. And so I had a laugh, obviously, because of the humor of the image. And then I realized afterwards, you know, probably a lot of people actually would, for real, do that. And I was like, that's already what's going on. You know, the mask thing's already ridiculous. I mean, apart from masks will compromise your health and definitely set you up for lung infection. I mean, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
We're all wearing masks so we don't get sick. So we all get sick because we're wearing masks. Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much on there. I'll just post one website where if anyone wants to see actual good science around it, they can check it out. It's a Swiss website. JB, this has been great. We've gone 20 minutes over already. Green Med Info, Porsche, yes. Green Med, Sayagi. I'm reading his book right now. It's fantastic. Regenerate. Check out their stuff too.
Yeah, that questioning COVID, that Sayagi made the site. It looks like it.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, that's a brilliant resource.
Also a great resource. Sure. I mean, I think, we've gotten to some pretty deep stuff. Hack your mind with your heart. Cultivate your practice of presence.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing like that. That is essentially it. If you could create a summary of all of this, it's like deepen into the heart all the time. It's our only true compass through this. Truly it is. I don't know another way through this except to live by the heart and to deepen into the heart all the time. And keep our attention there. And I think that is, if I could almost end on something, I think I'd say that would be especially when times get a little psycho like they are now. We can place our attention wherever we want, and our attention moves freely all over the place. And so a lot of the collective dream stroke collective nightmare, you place your attention in places that are spinning a negative mythology, and then that's what you get. Yeah. And so the safe place to put one's attention is in the heart. Literally settle there and allow attention to go to, say it a few ways, the feeling of being, what it feels like to merely be. That feeling is the best place to allow attention to dwell as a primary practice. Wherever else it might go, the feeling of being, the feeling of merely being, let attention rest there, and that is a more reliable guide than anything else in my book.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. For those of you who have watched tonight, if you've got friends and family you think could enjoy this and benefit from it, check out the replay, which we'll have up in the next couple of days. I've pasted the link in the chat screen. Conscious Conversations, superfoods.coza. We posted last week's talk with Darby Avocado on there and the previous one, so you can check that out. And next week I'll be doing a talk just solo by myself, talking about stress defense shield and super immunity, just bombarding you guys with techniques, and you can see what works for you. And that'll be at 6:30 next Wednesday. And I think that is about that. Thank you so much, JP. Have a freaking awesome evening.
Welcome, brother. It's been a total pleasure, actually. Yeah. We can chat more anytime. And thank you all of you for being on the call. I didn't see who all is on the call, but pleasure being part of this.
Well, for fun, I'll just unmute everyone, and everyone can just say good night and thank you, and then we can head on off.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again,
Good night.
next
Good
week.
night, guys. Good night.
Good night
Stay
from
well.
Di.
And thank you.
Most welcome.
Woohoo. Okay, ciao, guys.
Ciao.